Most men lose women not because they lack money or charm. They lose them because they're predictable. Always available, replying instantly, explaining everything. You've turned yourself into a habit, and habits aren't desired, they're used. The moment she feels she already has you secured, something shuts off. Slowly, silently. Today, you'll discover exactly what controls that switch and how to flip it back in your favor before it's too late. 1. Need for external validation. You see it everywhere. Instagram posts asking, "How do I look?" WhatsApp messages at midnight, "Are we okay?" The constant, "Did you like it?" after every small thing. These aren't innocent questions, they're tests. She's not seeking information, she's hunting for emotional supply, confirmation that she still commands your attention. Most men fail this test without even knowing it exists. They react instantly. "Wow, you look amazing. Of course we're good, babe." Automatic validation. Free validation. In the moment you hand it over that easily, your value drops like a stone. Here's what actually happens in her mind. She registers your compliment as noise, background static, because it cost her nothing. There was no standard, no filter, no weight behind your words. You gave it away like a desperate merchant trying to make a sale. Validation isn't affection, it's energy with intention. When you distribute it without thought, you're not being kind, you're being cheap with yourself. You're validating to secure her, to calm your own fear that she might cool off or disappear, and she feels that desperation like a sixth sense. The shift happens when you become selective, not cold, not withholding, selective. You observe before you approve. You notice what deserves recognition and what's just noise-seeking behavior. An automatic "good job" means nothing, but a well-timed "that was solid" said calmly at precisely the right moment, that lands with force. It carries weight because it's rare, because it's earned. When you start operating this way, watch what happens. Sometimes she'll seek you more. Sometimes she'll test you harder, throw ambiguous comments, try to provoke a reaction. She might joke in ways that aren't really jokes, and right there in that first test, you'll either lock in respect or lose it completely. How you respond in that single moment determines whether you're a man with standards or just another theory reader playing games he doesn't understand. 2. Relationship with uncertainty. The human mind despises emptiness. It craves closure, needs to understand, demands to predict what's coming next. But here's the uncomfortable truth. In attraction, well-managed emptiness is pure psychological fuel. When everything is clear, guaranteed, and explained, there's no tension, no anticipation, no emotion. Predictability kills desire faster than any rejection ever could. Picture this common scenario. She texts you at 9:10 p.m. You always reply at 9:11. Same tone, same rhythm, every single day. You think this makes you reliable, attentive, a good man, but without realizing it, you've become a comfortable emotional service, predictable and replaceable. She doesn't wonder about you anymore. She doesn't think about you when you're not there. She's categorized you as constant, and what's constant loses its pull.
Now, effective uncertainty isn't about disappearing out of insecurity or punishing her with silence. That's childish game playing. Real uncertainty comes from having an actual life, your own rhythm, your own priorities. It means replying when you genuinely can, not when you feel pressured. Not giving full reports of your day. Leaving natural spaces without frantically explaining them. When you create these spaces, something fascinating happens. She fills them with her mind. And when the mind fills spaces, it attaches. She starts wondering what you're doing, who you're with, why you haven't responded yet. That curiosity becomes investment. But listen carefully. This only works if your life has real substance behind it. If it doesn't, uncertainty just becomes emptiness. And sustained emptiness is perceived as exactly what it is, lack of value. This is where men fool themselves, thinking they're playing it smart when they're actually being used as emotional backup. There's one very specific sign that reveals you've already crossed that line. when she starts treating your time as negotiable while hers remains sacred. Watch for it, because once you see it, you'll know exactly where you stand. 3. Deep emotional connection. There's a difference between a woman thinking about you and a woman feeling seen by you. Most men believe listening is enough. It isn't. Anyone can nod along while she talks. What's rare, what changes everything, is reflecting back the emotion she hasn't even named yet. When you read what's underneath her words, when you catch the frustration she's hiding behind a casual complaint, when you identify the fear wrapped inside her excitement, something shifts. Her shoulders drop, her voice softens. She holds your gaze a second longer because suddenly she doesn't need to explain herself anymore. You already understand. That moment right there, that's when real connection forms. Not from agreeing with everything she says, not from fixing her problems, from showing her that her internal world makes sense to you, that you can hold it without getting overwhelmed by it. But here's where most men sabotage themselves completely. The instant she opens up, they lose their center. They become too eager, too emotional, too invested. They start treating every conversation like a therapy session. They confuse depth with dependency. They think connection means merging entirely, and without realizing it, they cross an invisible line. She doesn't pull away dramatically. There's no fight, no clear moment you can point to. She simply starts treating you differently. The man who understood her becomes the man who needs her emotional validation. The one who could hold space becomes the one seeking reassurance. And slowly, quietly, you get repositioned. True emotional connection isn't about diving deeper and deeper until you're both drowning. It's about being able to go deep and come back up. It's feeling her emotions without absorbing them. It's being present without losing yourself in her world. When you master this balance, close enough to understand, separate enough to stay solid, you become something she's never experienced before. A man who gets her but doesn't need her to feel complete. And that combination, that's what makes you impossible to replace. 4. Energy fluctuations. One day she's warm, texting you constantly, laughing at everything. The next day, cold, distant, no explanation, just silence. And in that exact moment, your reaction reveals everything about your position. Most men panic. They immediately shift their entire energy to match hers. Did I do something wrong? Are we okay? Why are you acting different? They chase clarity like their life depends on it, thinking they're fixing the problem. But here's what's actually happening. They're handing over complete control of their emotional state. They're teaching her that when she pulls back, he falls apart. The man who understands this does something radically different. He notices, he feels it, but he doesn't react from fear. His rhythm stays exactly the same. He doesn't punish her with coldness, he doesn't create drama, he doesn't adjust his behavior hoping she'll come back faster. He simply continues being himself. And when she does return, because she will, she finds him unchanged, solid, unmoved by her tests. That single response installs something powerful in her mind. I can shift my energy, but I cannot destabilize him. The moment a woman realizes she doesn't control your emotional center, she stops taking you for granted. She starts treating you with genuine care, not from fear, but from respect. 5. Behavior during chaos. Arguments reveal everything. When stress hits, when frustration boils over, when she's not at her best, that's when attraction gets tested for real. Most men either match her chaos or crumble under it. They raise their voice, get defensive, argue back. They think they're standing their ground, but they're actually becoming part of the storm. Here's what she's evaluating in those heated moments. Can you hold steady when I can't? Her emotional system isn't looking for agreement, it's looking for containment, for someone who doesn't break when pressure rises. True strength isn't about winning the argument, it's about slowing everything down when she speeds up. You speak more calmly, you say less, you listen without abandoning your position. One clear sentence, one firm boundary, then you hold it without drama, without threats, without over-explaining. That calm doesn't suppress her emotion, it regulates it. Her body starts coming down because your presence becomes a reference point she can trust. Many women test this instinctively, not to manipulate, but to know if you can hold them when they can't hold themselves. Pass that test, and something deeper than attraction locks in. Fail it, and respect quietly walks out the door. 6. Perception of status. Real status isn't announced, it's felt in the room before you even speak. Women don't evaluate your bank account or your job title when they're sitting across from you at dinner. They're watching something far more primal. How space bends around you. How the waiter responds when you make a simple request. Whether other men step aside or step forward when you enter a conversation. Whether you shrink when interrupted or hold your ground without flinching. This happens beneath conscious thought. Her mind is scanning for signals that can't be faked for long. Does he occupy space with ease, or does he apologize for existing? When someone challenges him, does he laugh nervously to be liked, or does he look, pause, and respond with weight? Both extremes lose, the man who explodes to prove dominance and the man who disappears to avoid conflict. Neither has real status.
True status lives in the details. It's in your posture when you're not trying to impress anyone. It's in the economy of your words. You don't over-explain, you don't compete for attention, you don't justify your decisions to people who haven't earned that access. You're simply comfortable in your own skin, and that comfort radiates. Here's what most miss. Status isn't about being cold or dismissive. That's insecurity wearing a mask. Authentic status is calm. It's solid. It's consistent. You don't need to dominate every room. You just need to never abandon yourself in any room. The waiter could ignore you, a stranger could talk over you, and your response stays the same. Grounded, unhurried, unbothered. When a woman perceives this, something shifts. She stops measuring you against other options and starts measuring herself against your standards. She wonders if she's enough for a man who clearly doesn't need validation from anyone. And that wondering, that's where attraction deepens into something she can't easily walk away from. 7. Coherence between words and actions. She tells you honesty matters most to her, that she can't stand games or being ignored, that communication is everything. Then she disappears for 2 days without a word, shows up late without warning, changes her story when it's convenient. And what do most men do? They swallow it. They tell themselves it's not worth the fight, that bringing it up will create drama, that letting it slide is the mature thing to do. That silence isn't maturity, it's fear dressed up as patience. And every single time you ignore a contradiction between what she says and what she does, you're teaching her something critical. Your standards don't actually exist. Watch what happens when you start paying attention. Not to punish her, not to keep score, but to observe reality as it is. When she says one thing and does another, you remember. You don't react immediately, you don't get emotional, you simply wait for the right moment, and then you return it to her with perfect calm. You mentioned this was important to you, that's why this caught my attention. That's it. No accusations, no anger, no long explanations trying to prove your point, just clarity. Just the mirror held up, so she can see her own inconsistency reflected back. This creates something powerful, exposure and respect at the same time. She realizes you're not distracted, not asleep at the wheel. You notice everything, and more importantly, you're not afraid to name what you see without making it a war. Most men avoid this moment because they're terrified of losing her. But here's what they don't understand. When you stop holding coherence, you've already lost yourself, and when you lose yourself, it's only a matter of time before she loses you too. The woman who realizes you remember what she says, observe what she does, and won't pretend otherwise, stops seeing you as just another option. She starts seeing you as a man with actual standards. 8. Direction and purpose. A woman doesn't want to guide you. She can do it for a while, maybe even months, but it drains her, exhausts her. And when exhaustion sets in, attraction walks out the door. You see, direction isn't about having everything figured out. It's not about knowing your entire future or never making mistakes. It's about not being lost, not drifting through life on autopilot, reacting to whatever comes your way.
Most men are physically present, but internally scattered. They change their opinions depending on who's standing in front of them. They seek approval before making simple decisions. They ask too many questions. They doubt everything, including themselves. And without realizing it, they place the woman in a position that kills desire, the position of leading them. Real direction is felt, not announced. It's knowing what you want and moving toward it even when nobody agrees with you. It's making decisions without asking for emotional permission from everyone around you. It's walking forward with calm certainty, not because you're arrogant, but because you trust yourself. When you have direction, you don't need to impose anything. You simply move, and whoever wants to walk with you does. Whoever doesn't falls behind. That creates something powerful. Calm, and well-positioned calm is deeply magnetic because it communicates one simple truth. This man knows where he's going, with me or without me. But here's the trap many fall into. They confuse direction with rigidity, with harshness, with controlling everything around them. That's not direction, that's fear wearing a mask. Authentic direction is flexible but firm. It listens but decides. It considers input but moves forward regardless. It doesn't justify every single step to prove itself worthy. That natural confidence, that quiet certainty, that's what makes it irresistible. Because she's no longer watching a man react to life. She's watching a man drive it. 9. Security versus availability. Here's the fatal mistake. You think creating security means always being there, always responding, always adapting, always giving in. But that kind of security doesn't maintain desire. It kills it. Because when she feels she has you guaranteed no matter what, her entire system relaxes. The tension drops, the investment drops, the care drops. Real security, the kind that keeps attraction alive, doesn't come from absolute guarantee. It comes from constant choice. When she knows you're present because you choose to be, not because you need to be, everything recalibrates. She starts valuing your time more, caring more, investing more, not from fear of losing you, but from recognizing your worth. This isn't about disappearing or playing childish games. It's about having a life that doesn't orbit around one person. Real priorities, your own rhythm, natural boundaries that aren't announced, they're simply lived. When she cancels plans last minute and you always accept it like nothing happened, you're teaching her that your time is cheap. When you maintain your schedule, your calm, and your dignity, you're teaching her that being with you is a privilege, not a right. The balance is subtle but devastatingly powerful. You're available without being automatic, close without being dependent, present without losing yourself. And when you achieve this, the dynamic shifts without a single conversation. She begins measuring something new. What happens if she loses you? Not dramatically, silently. That quiet thought alone changes how she treats you. But here's where most men sabotage everything. They feel her investing more and they panic. They rush to lock it down, cancel their plans, change their priorities, adapt too much. And without realizing it, they destroy the very tension they created. Availability with value isn't explained, it's embodied. You don't say you're busy, you are busy. You don't threaten to leave, you simply refuse to tolerate what doesn't align.
Everything before this moment prepares you for what happens when someone crosses the line. Not with a dramatic explosion or a grand gesture, but with something small. A disrespectful comment wrapped in laughter. A promise broken for the third time. A subtle manipulation you've seen before but chose to ignore. Right there, in that instant, everything gets decided. Most men react in one of two ways. They negotiate. They spend hours explaining why it hurt, trying to make her understand, searching for the right words to fix it. Or they explode, anger pouring out, words they'll regret later, only to come crawling back within days. Both reactions teach the exact same lesson. Your boundaries bend when pressure arrives. Here's what shifts everything. You don't argue, you don't threaten, you don't raise your voice or create drama. You simply lower your tone, stay calm, and look directly at her. Then you say something short and clear. "This doesn't work for me. I don't stay in dynamics like this." And you walk away. Not to manipulate, not to punish, to respect yourself. Within 24 hours, her entire perception recalibrates. She's no longer dealing with a man who tolerates out of fear. She's facing someone with real consequences. She might react with pride, anger, tears, or silence. None of that matters. What registers in her mind is this: respect isn't up for discussion with you. This is where many men feel vertigo, the fear of losing her, of being alone, of going too far. But understand this clearly: if you're not willing to lose someone who violates your standards, you've already lost yourself. And when you lose yourself, they eventually lose you too. The cut isn't about control, it's about closure. And when you close with dignity, everything reorders itself. Not always the way you expect, but always in the direction of self-respect. Integrity. Here's what separates men who are occasionally desired from men who become impossible to replace. It's not charisma, it's not status. It's what you do when nobody's watching, how you speak to yourself in private, how you handle failure when there's no audience to impress, whether you abandon your standards the moment loneliness creeps in at midnight. Women sense this without needing proof. They feel it in your energy, in the way you carry yourself, in decisions you make when there's nothing to gain. You can memorize every technique, master every psychological pattern, and still lose everything if your actions contradict who you claim to be, because integrity isn't performed, it's lived. Think about the last time you compromised yourself. Maybe you tolerated disrespect because you feared being alone. Maybe you chased validation from someone who barely noticed you existed. Maybe you broke a promise you made to yourself just to avoid temporary discomfort. Every time you do this, you teach your nervous system that your word means nothing. And if you can't trust yourself, how can anyone else? The man with real integrity doesn't announce his values in conversations. He demonstrates them through consistent action. He doesn't justify his boundaries. He just has them. He doesn't explain why he won't tolerate certain behavior. He just walks away, calmly, quietly, with zero drama.
When a woman encounters this level of internal coherence, something shifts. She stops testing you. She stops playing games. Because she recognizes she's no longer dealing with someone who operates from desperation. You become a fixed point in a world of uncertainty. Not perfect, but whole. Not flawless, but complete. This is what holds everything together when attraction fades and emotion fluctuates. Desire comes and goes. Respect endures. And respect only exists where integrity lives first. Everything else is just noise. So here's what it comes down to. You've spent your entire life being taught that love means sacrifice, that attraction means effort, that keeping someone means bending until you break. And that's exactly why you've been losing. The men who win aren't the ones who chase harder. They're the ones who stop chasing altogether. They build something so solid within themselves that their presence alone creates gravity. They don't negotiate their worth. They don't apologize for having standards. They don't stay where respect has died. This week, choose one thing. Just one. Stop giving automatic validation. Stop being predictable. Stop tolerating what doesn't align. Execute it quietly, consistently, without announcement. Watch what happens when you move from a place of calm control instead of desperate need. Some women won't adjust to this shift. Let them go. Because a man who filters stops begging. A man who holds his ground stops being invisible. And a man who refuses to lose himself becomes impossible to replace. This isn't about manipulation. It's about never betraying yourself again for temporary comfort. The moment you understand that, everything changes, not just with women, with life itself. You stop being someone who gets chosen. You become someone who chooses. And that distinction makes all the difference.